Hi, this is Ellen from the Chili Dog. I'm knitting a pair of Secret Admirer socks, and today I'm going to show you how to turn the heel. Because my heel flap is worked across an odd number of stitches, which is unconventional, my turn heel shaping is a cross between a traditional French turn heel and a half handkerchief turn heel. This has to do with the number of stitches in the first two turning rows. However, once the first two rows of the turn heel have been worked, the shaping method is the same for all the styles. I've already finished knitting my heel flap and I'm ready to turn the heel, so let's get started. I'm starting with a right side row. I'm going to slip the first stitch, then knit to one stitch past the center of the heel flap. If you were working a French heel, you would knit to 2 stitches past the center, and for a half handkerchief heel, you would knit to the exact center. My flap is 31 stitches wide, so I am going to slip the first stitch and then knit 16. Now I'm going to slip, slip, knit, or SSK. So you slip one stitch knitwise, a second stitch knitwise, and then knit them together. Knit one more stitch, and then turn the work. And you'll notice here you have not finished the entire row, and that's perfectly normal. This is a short row method. On the wrong side, you're going to slip one stitch, then purl to one stitch past the center of the heel. Again, for the French turn heel, you'd purl to 2 stitches past the center, and for a half handkerchief, you just purl to the center. So I am going to slip one, and then purl 4. Now purl 2 stitches together, purl 1, and turn. From this point, the shaping is exactly the same for the French heel, the half handkerchief heel, and my hybrid of the two. Notice that over here, there's a pretty sizable gap in between these 2 stitches. This gap can be used as a landmark in your work. So for every right side row, we're going to slip the first stitch, then knit to 1 stitch before that gap. So slip the first stitch and then knit across until we're 1 stitch before the gap. And there's the gap, and I have 1 stitch before it. Now we're going to close that gap by making an SSK with a stitch from each side of the gap. So I'm going to slip, slip, and then knit the 2 stitches together, and then knit 1 more stitch, and turn. Again, notice that over here, there's another sizable gap, and we're going to use that one as a landmark also. For every wrong side row, we're going to slip the first stitch and purl to 1 stitch before the gap. So slip the first stitch and purl to 1 stitch before the gap. And again, I've stopped here 1 stitch before the gap. We'll close the gap by purling 2 stitches together. And then purl 1 stitch. And turn your work. Again, on the right side, we'll slip 1, knit to 1 stitch before the gap, close the gap by doing an SSK with a stitch from before and after the gap, knit 1 more stitch, and turn. Then on every wrong side row, you slip 1 stitch, purl to 1 stitch before the gap, purl the stitches that are on either side of the gap together to close things up. And then purl 1 more stitch and turn. And you just repeat those 2 rows until all of the heel flap stitches have been worked. Now, depending on how many stitches you start with, you may need to omit the knit 1 and purl 1 stitches that occur after the decreases on the final wrong side and right side rows of the turn heel. I hope you enjoyed learning how to turn a sock heel. And if you'd like to try this technique in a pattern, head over to the shop section of thechilidog.com and look for my Secret Admirer socks. Until we stitch again, happy knitting!